Hello, welcome back to the library. The Mortal Kombat series has had a bumpy ride on the PlayStation console, but none are as bumpy as Mortal Kombat Special Forces. The follow up to Mortal Kombat Mythologies, Sub-Zero, Special Forces took on a different approach to damn near everything from its predecessor, including switching to fully polygon characters and stages. However, there is a much deeper story here, in the same vein as Resident Evil 2. Where Capcom's Baby lost its original version, Special Forces lost its original version and much of its development team. This included Mortal Kombat co-creator John Tobias, who left to form Studio Gigante, the creators of Tao Feng, WrestleMania 21, and that's it. The hype for Special Forces ramped up at E3 in 1999, garnering several multi-page spread previews in various magazines, with PSM offering a full cover story and interview with John Tobias. Of note is how the discussion of the game's canonical title, what should have been Mortal Kombat Mythologies Special Forces, was too wordy. So, it was stripped of Mythologies angle to facilitate easier communication. No one, however, told Prima Games, who provided earlier concept art to GameStop for their later cancelled companion guide. The original prototype featured Sonya Blade and Jax in a dual origin story. The two heroes team up to prevent the plain-faced Kano from running away with a nuclear warhead in a 3D environment, with brawler-like action tied to Tomb Raider-like exploration. The one-player game allowed gamers to choose either Jax or Sonya to play as, with the game's storyline properly tracking which character you were, like in Resident Evil 2. Cutscenes would play out the same, but what parts you were privy to depended on who you were. A great example of this is at the end of the demo. If Sonya is in play, she will discover the gruesome fate of her comrades and then work her way down the hallway towards Kano, who's holding the last squad mate hostage. If you're controlling Jax, you'll see him following behind Sonya, skipping the previous discovery. If starting as Jax, you appear unscathed from a blown-up van, having to find your way into the warehouse through a key taken from a pummeled Black Dragon gang member outside. Once inside, it becomes a game of cat and mouse within the giant stacks of crates and other Black Dragon members. Despite only being one area, the prototype offered a fantastic vision of what could have been. The 3 levels of the warehouse are woven in a way that inspires exploration and creativity. The first floor's crate stacks are their own mini labyrinth that, once climbed and patrolled, give way to weapon bonuses, a health pack here and there, and a way around a locked door on the scaffolding above. Continuing to pummel his way through the upper walkways would produce a second floor elevator key, giving access to, you guessed it, the second floor. Once in, this floor is the complete inverse of the former. Rather than work your way up, you must work your way through to the center, weaving in and out of offices and empty cells. Once the 3rd floor key is found, it's one last jaunt for a health bonus, 2 more knockouts, and then the only boss in the game, Quinn. It's a simple affair. A quick combination of punches and kicks will keep locking him out of this gun-firing animation. Once he's trashed, walking to the far door will trigger the final cinematic sequence in the game, which we've discussed earlier. Of note here is that the last thing you see is Sonya taking a single shot before the screen goes black. It would be a good guess that that's how Kano got his replacement eye. As a side note, I like how if you play Sonya's side, Kano drops a line reference directly from the original live-action Mortal Kombat movie's Kano, right before Jax runs in.
You flinch on that trigger, I'm gonna carve a new smile on your partner from ear to ear.
That's the entire prototype, with one more aside. There's a story object that can be collected by finding a cell key on floor 2, and then going all the way to the basement to the cell across from Sonya's. It's a logbook from a wounded soldier who mentions it in a message to you. It doesn't appear to change anything in the prototype's gameplay. I'm guessing it would have been in the next cinematic sequence to open up the second stage. No lie, despite the janky camera issues, I was having a good time with the prototype, and it let the series breathe a little. But as I shared in the opening moments, the game hit a wall when it lost many of its team members. News sites began reporting on various problems within Midway, including the game's fate. It was soon revealed that Special Forces' original incarnation would be scrapped and redone by a different team. This meant they would have a year or less to get it done, which meant a lot of things had to be scrapped. That included any references to Sonya Blade, Kano's original pair of eyes, the majority of vertical exploration, and the original Tomb Raider-like vibe. In its place were just jacks, overhead levels, with the control scheme swapped out for the fighting game's 4-button combo moves. As the rebuilding continued, it was clear Midway knew they were in trouble. Ads for the game were starting to roll out with the astonishingly low price of $19.99. Even Paperboy had a higher asking price, and that got cancelled. Once review copies finally started hitting publications in early 2000, the writing was on the wall. Scathing reviews filled magazines, some reducing the entire review to just a portion of a single page. It was an instant fatality for the game and the poor team that tried to save it. As the decades go on, Special Forces continues to be punished and added to the collective worst of lists, a punching bag for anyone who needs a few views to make themselves feel good for the day. So the question is it that bad of a game? No. Let's peel back the layers. Having played through the game first and then realizing the prototype existed, it's interesting to see what survived, what didn't, and how the scraps were used. First, let's get the obvious out of the way. The replacement team wanted a more Metal Gear Solid vibe to the whole thing. So much so that the entire first level is practically a love letter to referencing it. The steely blue and silver containers, cold walls, hell, a forklift or two, and a covered truck show up. This approach also hides a more obvious shortcoming. It meant they wouldn't have to worry about verticality and puzzle exploration. Climbing through crate stacks goes away, and instead, standard floor layouts and staircases take their place. Some of the more curious prototype assets that did make it in? The toilet from Sonya's cell and a variety of wall textures.
Round 2.
With Jax flying solo, the storyline was completely changed. The laser-eyed Kano breaks his rogues gallery out of prison, and it's up to our main man to bring them all to justice. The nuclear warhead has disappeared, and in its place is a giant gem whose powers are never really explained in-game, but if you read a couple of wikis, it's basically just gonna let him open portals everywhere. Each level brings us one step closer to the criminal mastermind, but there's a barrel of bad guys and level design in our way. The majority of the game centers on finding keys and keycards to open doors or access computers that will let you continue. To the team's credit, there are also instances where you need to solve key codes using your environment. One requires logging into computers to get single sentences with highlighted letters. These letters spell out the numbers you need to enter into the keypad. Second set requires reading the license plates of in-game employee cars in a parking garage. Several instances name drop other Mortal Kombat characters and lore, which was a nice touch. These little touches can get lost in the bigger picture though. If there's a crime that can be blamed for Special Forces' failure, it's level layout. Working under a tight time frame doesn't allow for much creativity, so to pad out the time your $20 bought you, there is an unhealthy amount of backtracking in the game. Almost every access MacGuffin once requires you to retrace your steps halfway or completely to the beginning of a stage. This wouldn't be so bad if the stages didn't often branch into empty corridors like it was a Japanese RPG dungeon. I'm not kidding you when I say you should have a pen and paper ready for the last two stages, as it gets extremely easy to keep getting turned around. That's not to say there aren't things to appreciate. Like the Metal Gear homage, there are other little references to smile at, intentional or not. The sewer corridors look like they're a nod to the Deadpool from Mortal Kombat 2, and parts of the Black Dragon skyscraper office look like nods to the bank level in MK3. Moving into the gameplay, interacting with enemies can be hit or miss, literally. Many enemies can block far too easily, which means heavily relying on the light punch button since it's the fastest attack to reach them before they block. These attacks aren't without merit though. Performing specific strings will produce combos, and these combos will fill up your special moves meter. Special moves are two variations of Jack's ground pound slam and his dashing punch from Mortal Kombat 2. The standard versions will knock down enemies or make them stumble, while the powered up versions will obliterate them or set them on fire and then obliterate them. The overall implementation of the entire offensive is rough, But there is joy to be had. Successfully lining up 2 or 3 enemies in a row and setting them ablaze, or knocking enemies off a stage with the uppercut combo brought a smile every time. The second offensive option are weapons, the automatic kind. Depending on the stage, Jax can secure 9mm guns, machine guns, and even a sniper rifle. Players can holster weapons back and forth, allowing themselves to choose if they want to conserve ammunition and go beat up somebody, or just pop a few caps in their ass. This combat, and I mean that with a C, goes both ways, since the enemies have guns too, with some often annoying instances. Divided between 2 problem areas are the depth of the field and the line of sight. With line of sight, the game's overhead camera system can betray you as armed enemies you can't see yet get in a few easy pot shots, draining your health quickly. This can be remedied with some help from the game's heads-up display. Just before there's an enemy or more within your field of vision, their health bars appear on screen in the upper right corner. This buys you time to stop and switch to first-person view to look around. From there, it's either scampering back behind a wall to wait till their backs are turned, or just open up with a gun and beat their ass. With bullets. With depth of field, the game's fog distance can betray you with snipers who can see you, but you can't see them. This problem is solved thanks to a lovely little addition from the dev team. If your targeting dot is a headshot, it will read headshot on screen. Even if you can't fully see them, the reticle still confirms. You can use this to your advantage as you inch towards a known enemy location and snipe them from safety, even through the fog. Boss fights are rough, but with the right exploit, they can be gunned down using your entire hardware inventory or pummeled to death with simple combos. They would have been a bit easier had I remembered the special moves though. I literally went the entire game forgetting I had them. The distance a dash punch covers would have helped in fights where the enemy throws projectiles. The ground pound would have been a great counter to Tremor's Quake in his fight. Bringing all of these assets together, the pre-level communications with Jax's contact, Jem. Combined with the opening movie, it's clear they were leaning into the blaxploitation era of cinema. Jax is presented as the all-American hero, almost down to an Austin Powers level of self-parody. His interactions with Jem are laced with James Bond-like flirting and classic 70s attitudes.
With a twin-bladed honey. Too bad I had to take her out though. That Tazia sure was a looker.
Jax, the mission, remember?
It's goofy, not quite cringe-inducing, and did what it could with the source material it had. Truthfully, I think this way they did it so they wouldn't have to animate any characters back and forth. The music and sound effects are fine, but similar to the intermissions, the voice work is cheesy at best. Even in the prototype, there's this level of overacting and cheese that makes a lot of the experience absurd.
And, oh, delicious irony. You shall be the first to serve me.
The only thing I'm gonna serve you is a steel fist to your face, you delusional maniac. And after you...
A footnote to the absurdity is how females are portrayed, including a strange use of an inside informant. I can hear the eyes rolling, but bear with me. In the prototype, Sonya's sexualization is front and center, literally. But her escape involves her asking a guard to help her pull her pants down so she can use the toilet.
What do you want now?
I have to use the toilet.
So use the toilet. There's one in your cell.
But I can't. My hands are cuffed.
I ain't taking off your cuffs.
Well, then can you at least come in and pull my pants down for me?
Of course, it's a ruse, and she beats him up once he moves in for the thrill. It just comes off icky. In the retail copy, Jem's thirst for Jax is readily apparent, but it's a Dragon Tower level that cements the awkwardness. If Jax is fast enough, you can clobber a female ninja as she's leaving the bathroom, and then sneak up on one showering like this is an 80s horror flick. It's a bit easier to take it in stride if one keeps the idea of this whole thing being a parody of itself, but it had to be said. The oddest of the bunch, though, is the secret informant in that level. I was fully expecting to find someone and have a chat with them, and instead, you get a voiceless, soulless female who just walks to a locker and comes back to you. I misinterpreted that as an NPC's pre-programmed route and punched her to knock her out. Imagine my shock when I realized that was supposed to be her telling me which locker to go to get the next MacGuffin in. I am so sorry, nameless voiceless team member. It won't happen again. Because I probably will never play it again. With all that on the table, I hate to be the bearer of good news, but I still had a decent time with the game. Is it flawed in many ways? Yes. Will it ever be in the top 5,000 games of all time lists? No. There is some fun to be had, though, and I can't agree with the old reviews or modern equivalents of it being the worst MK game ever. I can tell you what the worst MK games ever are. They're MK Advance on the GBA and MK Trilogy on the Gamecom, and you can trust me on the latter. I wrote the guide for it. What is more important, though, is that games like this and Mythologies do need to make it to market. Pushing aside its development hell, it paved the way for Midway to do Shaolin Monks and try new ideas like the phenomenal RPG mode in Mortal Kombat Deception or the character variations in MK10. Special Forces stumbled so that other ideas could run free and give us the games and new modes we do cherish. On the Game-Rave review scale, it's an upsetting 4 out of 10. Mortal Kombat Special Forces does have its place in history, just not as one of the worst games out there. If you're curious, you can punch in the cheat code for a healthy amount of combos and munition reserves and allow yourself to just run through for the hell of it, popping everyone with a 9mm. There are far worse games you could play. Watch this video. Something I did not realize until I was working in post and had to redo this whole thing because the audio didn't transfer over is that in the prototype, there's a cinema with Kano and Cabal before he gets his face destroyed, and then some character named Quinn, who I've never heard of. That extra character, Quinn, ends up becoming just a normal NPC in the final stage of the normal retail release. I thought that was a nice little way to keep an extra character in. But yeah, so I have to know, guys, what is your favorite MK game, your least favorite MK game, and what did you think about Special Forces if you did play it? Hit me in the comments section below, bring it to the Discord. I'll see you there. I'm here when you need me. Take care.